I'm Rudy Koski in Austin.
I'm Greg Grugan in Houston.
And I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas, and this is Texas, The Issue Is.
Last week we spoke with Democrat Beto O'Rourke. Now Governor Greg Abbott takes on the issues.
We begin the discussion with the Supreme Court abortion ruling, how it has impacted recent elections, and if the governor is worried about a November ballot box surprise.
On the election, listen, it's going to be decided on a lot of issues, but on the abortion issue itself, remember this. What Beto is in favor of is unlimited abortion at taxpayer expense. But Rudy, here's the deal. I mentioned the other issues. Jobs. Texans care about jobs. People care about public safety, their communities. Texans are strongly against defunding the police. I signed a law to prevent defunding the police. Beto is in favor of defunding the police.
A lot of people are angry about the abortion law trigger here in Texas, think it's extreme. Are you willing to have some exceptions? Will you accept some exceptions to that law?
So listen, there are some things that we need to work on because what we do is we prioritize the life of the mother as well as the child. And there seems to be some confusion about the way that the life of the mother is to be protected. Let me just give you a couple of quick examples. An ectopic pregnancy is not an abortion if you remove the ectopic pregnancy. A miscarriage. There's been apprehension by doctors about dealing with both of those two issues. And I want to see legislation come out that will both do more as well as to clarify the ways in which we are protecting the life of the mother.
Would that include rape and incest?
Well, listen, that vote was cast last year.
California is outlawing combustion engine vehicles, new ones, the sale of them by 2035. You've kind of gotten into a discussion with the governor over there. What's your reaction to that?
Well, if you keep up with the way technology is going, there's going to be so many alternatives that allow the internal combustion engine to continue. And there's programs that we're going to be rolling out and projects by businesses that are breaking ground in the state of Texas that will provide clean burning fuel that continues to use the internal combustion engine.
What can you do to help the oil patch during this period of the Biden administration?
Biden is trying to use his EPA to impose those regulations that would both reduce the production of oil and gas as well as increase the cost of it. I'm working to prevent those regulations from going into place so that we are able to produce more oil and gas and lower the cost of the price at the pump.
O'Rourke told us that he felt that the Biden administration isn't doing enough to solve the problem on the border, but he said if he's governor, he will pull back the guard.
So that's kind of typical Beto, where he continues to change what his answers are. If Beto were to be elected, it would just be an extension of the Biden administration in the state of Texas. We cannot allow that.
We just had the anniversary of Hurricane Harvey. Congress has authorized the start of, in a way, the construction of the Ike Dike, the coastal spine. Do you support that? Do you think it will actually provide the protection we need?
Yeah, 100%.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but when you consider the money at risk, the coastal spine will protect more vast regions of the state of Texas. It's a lot of money, but it's worth the investment. Probably the money entailed in it is far less than the total cost of what Hurricane Harvey cost.
The mayor of New York doesn't like your buses to New York City with the migrants, but it seems to be catching a lot of attention, although he did say that you need to buy a dictionary to understand the word hypocrisy.
What the mayor of New York needs to do, he needs to be talking to the one person who has both the responsibility and the control to do something about the border, and that's President Biden.
Do you understand the meaning of hypocrisy?
I do.
That's what the mayor of New York wants you to understand.
The mayor of New York has been hypocritical for two reasons. One, they have implemented a sanctuary city policy. And the big talk until they actually had to step up and walk the walk, which they were incapable of doing, but also is hypocritical in this way. And that is, before we began busing illegal immigrants to New York City, President Biden had been flying them into New York, and they were winding up in New York City. But suddenly, when the Republican governor from Texas does something about it, he starts complaining.
In regards to Uvalde, Beto O'Rourke says you have not done anything and another shooting is on you.
After Uvalde, Day after day after day, I issued 6 directives on separate days about action to be taken, and then after that, I charged the legislature with coming up with answers and solutions on 5 different topics. It was in the aftermath of that that they came up with more than $100 million to increase safety in our schools, but also the Texas Education Agency was charged to make sure that when schools open this school year, all the schools will be implementing the safety measures that came out of my prior instructions about the way to respond to school shootings.
How do you decompress from all this?
My great decompression would be my golden retrievers, Peaches and Pancake. However, we're moving into the sweet spot of my decompression. It begins this week, and that is college football.
You know, as you go across the state, crisscrossing, what's on your music list? What are you listening to?
Well, obviously, a good friend of mine, a guy who played at my last inauguration, George Strait, is always the best. He's the king.
In one word, for me, that interview was haymaker, as in the governor was really swinging hard. Greg, what's your word?
Rudy, my word is playbook.
Steve, with the word, how do you describe what was said?
I think the governor was safe, honestly.